The diagnosis. The fluorescent lights in the oncologist's office had a particular hum, a frequency I would come to know intimately over the following months. But that first afternoon, sitting across from Dr. Patel with his kind eyes and carefully neutral expression, I noticed only the way his fingers tapped against my file. A nervous habit. I would learn later that he did this before delivering the worst news. "Miss Price," he said. "Vivian. The results are conclusive. Pancreatic cancer, stage 3. The words landed somewhere outside my body, as though he were talking about someone else entirely. I watched his lips move, heard phrases like treatment options and quality of life, and important decisions ahead, but my mind had snagged on a single thought. I was supposed to meet Grayson at 5. He'd texted that morning the first message in weeks demanding I come home to discuss something urgent. I thanked Dr. Patel. I signed forms. I walked out of the medical center into a Houston afternoon so bright and ordinary that it seemed impossible anything had changed. My phone buzzed. Grayson again. "Where are you? Don't be late." I hailed a cab. The driver asked where to, and I gave him the address of the house I'd shared with my husband for 3 years. The house I'd decorated room by room. The house where I'd imagined raising children, growing old. The house I was about to lose. Because I already knew what Grayson wanted to discuss. I'd seen the news that morning, playing on the television in the hospital waiting room while I waited for my name to be called. Grayson Whitmore, heir to the Whitmore shipping empire, announces separation from wife. Sources close to the family confirm the split is related to recent revelations about Vivian Ashworth Price's parentage. 29 years as the Ashworth heiress. And then, 3 months ago, a stranger's face on a doorstep, a DNA test, and the unraveling of everything I'd believed about myself. The cab pulled up to the wrought iron gates. I paid the driver and walked up the long driveway, my heels clicking against the flagstones. The maple trees lining the path had begun to turn red and gold against the September sky. Beautiful. I'd always loved autumn here. Grayson was waiting in the living room. He stood when I entered, and for a moment I saw something flicker across his face. Concern, perhaps, or guilt. It vanished quickly. "You look terrible," he said. "Have you been sleeping?" "Not much." He gestured toward the coffee table. A stack of documents sat there, thick and official. Divorce papers. I'd known they were coming, but seeing them made something twist in my chest. "Vivian." His voice was gentle now, the voice he used when he wanted something. "I think we both know this marriage has run its course. With everything that's happened with your family, they're not my family." "Right. Of course." He paused. "The thing is, the Ashworth's real daughter is back. Estelle. And she and I." He stopped, started again. "I need the Ashworth connections for the business. You understand. I've worked too hard to let this opportunity go." I understood perfectly. Grayson had always been practical about love. "What are you offering?" My voice came out flat, businesslike. I barely recognized it as my own. 300,000. Enough to start over comfortably. Find a nice apartment. Take some time to figure out what you want to do. 1 million. His eyebrows rose. "That's quite a jump. I have expenses." He laughed a short, disbelieving sound. "What expenses? You've never worked a day in your life. I'm not paying for some extended shopping spree while you find yourself." I reached into my bag and withdrew the diagnosis report. The paper was still crisp, the ink fresh. I placed it on the table beside the divorce papers. "Cancer," I said. "I need money for treatment." The silence that followed was the longest of our marriage. Outside, the wind scattered leaves against the windows with soft, papery sounds. I watched Grayson's face as he processed the information, the confusion, the dawning comprehension, and then something I hadn't expected. Fear. What kind of cancer? Pancreatic. He didn't know what that meant. I could see him searching his memory, coming up empty. Grayson had never paid attention to anything that didn't directly affect his business interests. Is it serious? The absurdity of the question almost made me laugh. Instead, I said, "It's serious." More silence. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd once found endearing, back when I still found things about him endearing. 2 million, he said finally. "Get whatever treatment you need. The best doctors, the best hospitals, I'll sign whatever you want. Thank you. I should have felt something triumph, perhaps, or satisfaction at extracting more than he'd planned to give. But I felt only tired, bone-deep exhausted, the kind of fatigue that no amount of sleep could touch. Grayson was watching me with an odd expression. You're taking this very calmly. Would you prefer I cry? No, he shook his head. You've changed, Vivian. You used to be so dramatic about everything. Remember how you'd throw fits over the smallest things? I remembered. I remembered being young and in love and secure enough in that love to be ridiculous. I remembered pretending to be angry so he would catch me in his arms and kiss me until I forgot what I was upset about. I remembered him laughing against my hair, calling me adorable. That girl felt like a stranger now. I'll have my lawyer send revised papers tomorrow, I said. Sign them promptly. I won't drag this out. He nodded, visibly relieved. This was the Vivian he could handle. Reasonable, cooperative, asking for nothing he wasn't prepared to give. As I turned to leave, he reached out and touched my arm. Vivian, if you need anything, if the treatment doesn't work, or if you run into trouble, you can reach out. I'll help if I can. I looked at his hand on my arm, at the wedding ring he hadn't yet removed, at the face I'd loved for 5 years. What was left to say? Goodbye, Grayson. I walked out into the autumn afternoon. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Children laughed. The world continued, indifferent to my ending. Chapter 2. The bus was crowded, pressed bodies and recycled air. I stood near the back, one hand gripping the overhead rail, trying not to wince each time we hit a bump. The pain in my abdomen had been growing worse all day, a dull ache that occasionally sharpened into something that stole my breath. Behind me, a group of college-aged women scrolled through their phones, voices bright with gossip. Did you see? Grayson Whitmore is single again. Finally. His wife was such a nobody. She wasn't a nobody, she was fake royalty, even worse. I heard the real daughter is super accomplished. Harvard, or maybe Yale. Definitely Ivy League. Meanwhile, the fake one spent her whole life going to charity galas and learning flower arranging. They laughed. I adjusted my face mask and stared out the window at the passing city. They weren't wrong, exactly. I'd been raised for one purpose. To be a wealthy man's wife, piano lessons and etiquette classes and conversational French. I knew how to host a dinner party for 50, how to make small talk with diplomats, how to smile until my face ached at endless fundraisers. Useful skills for an heiress, useless for anyone else. The bus lurched, and the pain in my stomach clenched hard enough to make me gasp. A woman beside me glanced over with concern. Are you all right? Fine. I managed. Just motion sick. But when I stepped off at my stop, my legs wouldn't hold me. I made it 3 steps before my knees buckled. The sidewalk rushed up to meet me. Voices, somewhere above. Hands on my shoulders. Someone calling for help. When I woke, I was in a hospital bed, an IV in my arm and a monitor beeping steadily beside me. A nurse was checking my vitals. There she is, she said, her voice warm. You gave everyone quite a scare. Someone called an ambulance, said you just collapsed on the street. I had no memory of falling, only of the pain. It seemed distant now, muffled by whatever they'd given me. Your emergency contact has been notified, the nurse continued. He should be here soon. I opened my mouth to ask who that was. I'd never updated my information after the separation when the door opened and a familiar figure strode in. Grayson, still listed as my husband, still technically responsible for me. He looked annoyed. What happened? They said you collapsed? I'm fine. You don't look fine. You look like death. He stopped, winced. Sorry. Poor choice of words. The nurse excused herself, and we were left alone with the beeping monitors and the weight of everything unsaid. I signed the papers, Grayson said finally. They'll be processed tomorrow. Thank you. The $2 million will be in your account by end of week. Thank you. He stood there awkwardly, hands in his pockets, looking around the room as though searching for an excuse to leave. I should. Estelle is waiting. We have dinner reservations. Of course. He started toward the door, then paused. Vivian, I hope. He stopped, shook his head. Take care of yourself. And then he was gone. And I was alone with the machines and the fluorescent lights and the impossible task of learning how to die. Chapter 3. Through a series of desperate phone calls and a considerable bribe to a well-connected acquaintance, I secured an appointment with Dr. Sarah Chen, one of the country's leading pancreatic oncologists. Her office was in the city's most prestigious hospital, all glass and steel and hushed efficiency. I arrived early, clutching my folder of test results, trying to project a confidence I didn't feel. When the nurse called my name, I walked into the examination room and came face to face with a woman I'd only seen in photographs. She was younger than I'd expected, mid-30s, with sharp features and intelligent eyes that assessed me like a specimen under glass. Her name tag read Dr. S. Chen, but I knew immediately who she really was. Estelle Ashworth, the real daughter, the woman who had replaced me. "Please, sit," she said, her voice professionally neutral. "I've reviewed your scans." I sat. My heart was hammering, but I kept my face composed. She didn't seem to recognize me, or if she did, she was choosing not to acknowledge it. "You're presenting atypically for pancreatic cancer," she continued, studying the reports. "Some of your markers are unusual. When did you first notice symptoms?" "About 3 months ago, I thought it was stress." "Stress," she made a note. "And you waited this long to seek treatment?" The judgment in her voice was subtle, but unmistakable. I thought about explaining about how my entire life had imploded, how I'd been too numb to pay attention to my own body, how the pain had seemed like just one more thing in a cascade of disasters. I said nothing. "We'll need additional scans, blood work, a biopsy." She stood, gesturing toward the examination table. "Lie back. I'm going to do a preliminary exam." The examination was thorough and brutal. Whatever she was using felt like it was tearing me apart from the inside. I gasped, gripping the table's edge. I struggled to breathe. "Anesthetic. The discomfort is temporary. You can manage." The dismissiveness in her tone made something click into place. She knew. She knew exactly who I was, and she was enjoying this. When it was finally over, I could barely stand. I fumbled my way off the table, legs shaking, stomach cramping violently. "We'll schedule you for chemo," she said, not looking up from her notes. "Conservative treatment to start. Dr. Chen." My voice was steadier than I felt. "I have resources. I want the most aggressive treatment possible." She looked up then, and I saw at the flicker of contempt she'd been hiding behind her professional mask. "Are you the doctor here, or am I? I just want... You'll receive appropriate treatment based on your condition. Go home. We'll call you when a bed opens up." She turned back to her computer, and I understood that I was dismissed. I made it to the hallway before the pain doubled me over. I slid down against the wall, pressing my hands to my abdomen, breathing through the agony in shallow gasps. It lasted for what felt like hours. By the time I could move again, the corridor was dark and quiet, the day staff gone home. I was making my way toward the elevator, one hand braced against the wall, when I heard voices from a staff room with an open door. "That pancreatic case you saw earlier?" A woman's voice, sympathetic. "So young. Such a terrible disease." Then another voice, Dr. Chen's, colder and harder than before. "Save your pity. With a diagnosis like that, she'd be better off throwing herself off the roof. Just prolonging the suffering otherwise. A waste of everyone's time and resources." My blood went cold. "That seems harsh," the first woman said carefully. "I'm being realistic. Pancreatic cancer is a death sentence. Why pretend otherwise?" A pause, and then her voice shifted to something brighter. "Anyway, congratulations again. Being recognized as the real Ashworth heiress, you must be thrilled. It's been an adjustment, but yes, it's nice to finally belong somewhere." I stood frozen in the hallway, processing what I'd heard. My doctor, the woman responsible for my treatment, had just wished me dead. My hand found my phone. I opened the recording app and waited. "I'll keep working, of course," Dr. Chen continued. "I'm not like that fake heiress, playing helpless housewife. Look where that got her." I pushed open the door. Both women turned, Dr. Chen's colleague, a slight woman with kind eyes, looked startled. Dr. Chen herself recovered quickly, her expression smoothing into professional blankness. "Miss Price, I thought you'd left." I pulled down my face mask. Smiled. Estelle. We finally meet. Chapter 4. The silence stretched between us, heavy with everything unspoken. "I see you've discovered who I am," Estelle said finally. Her posture had shifted, no longer the detached physician, but something more combative, assessing me for threats. "Does that change things? You tell me." I held up my phone, pressed play. Her own voice filled the room. She'd be better off throwing herself off the roof, just prolonging the suffering otherwise. Her colleague blanched and muttered something about needing to check on a patient, fleeing the room before either of us could stop her. Estelle's expression didn't change, but I saw her calculating. "Recording a medical consultation," she said. "You could lose access to treatment entirely for that. And you could lose your license for those comments. Your reputation as the benevolent Ashworth heiress. All that carefully cultivated goodwill gone." We stared at each other across the small room. Two women who should never have been enemies, linked by an accident of birth and the machinations of others. "What do you want?" she asked. "The Anderson Cancer Institute in Houston. Best pancreatic treatment center in the world. You did your residency there. Your mentor still runs the research division. You want me to get you admitted?" "I want you to get me admitted immediately. The waitlist extends into next year. I don't have that long." For the first time, something like uncertainty crossed her face. "That's I can't just snap my fingers and make that happen." "Figure it out, otherwise I don't sign the divorce papers. Grayson stays legally married to me." The mask cracked. Something vicious flickered in her eyes and then, just as quickly, vanished. Her whole demeanor shifted. Tears welled up, her lower lip trembled. "You know how much I love Grayson," she whispered. "You're using that to threaten me? After everything you've taken from me, the transformation was so sudden, so complete, that I almost admired it." She'd clearly had practice. "Vivian," a voice from behind me. Grayson, striding into the room like a man arriving to solve a problem. "What are you doing?" I heard raised voices. He went straight to Estelle, pulling her into his arms, shooting me a look of barely concealed disgust. "She's upset," he said, as though I couldn't see that myself. "What did you say to her?" Estelle pressed her face against his chest, her voice emerging muffled and wounded. "It's my fault. I knew treating her would be complicated, but I wanted to help. I should have known she'd resent me." Grayson's arms tightened around her. "You have nothing to apologize for. She should be grateful anyone's willing to treat her at all." I watched them, the protective embrace, the whispered reassurances, and felt something shift inside me. Not jealousy, not anymore. Something colder and more clarifying. Estelle looked up at Grayson with swimming eyes. "I'll get her into Anderson, whatever it takes. I won't let her condition go untreated because of our history." "You're too good," he murmured. "Too generous." He turned to me, his expression hardening. "Vivian, you're not an Ashworth anymore. You're not anyone. What makes you think you deserve world-class treatment? What makes you think you deserve anything?" He kept talking, cataloging my inadequacies, my failures, my delusions. I let the words wash over me without impact. I'd heard variations of this speech before from my adoptive parents when they discovered the truth, from society friends who'd suddenly become unavailable, from the endless parade of people who'd loved the Ashworth name more than they'd ever loved me. When I'd heard enough, I raised my hand and slapped him across the face. The sound echoed off the walls. Estelle's performance broke. She stared at me with genuine shock. Grayson touched his cheek, stunned, speechless. "Get me into Anderson," I said quietly. "Both of you, or I burn everything down." I walked out without looking back. Chapter 5. 1 week later, I boarded a plane to Houston with $2 million in my account and divorce papers in my bag. The Anderson Cancer Institute rose from the Texas landscape like a monument to human stubbornness, a gleaming complex dedicated to fighting the unfightable, curing the incurable. I arrived in the late afternoon, checked into my room, and spent the evening staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Tomorrow would begin the tests, the treatments, The long, uncertain road ahead. Tonight, I allowed myself one last night of not knowing. The next morning, I went down to the gardens for air. The institute grounds were surprisingly beautiful, designed, I'd read, to provide patients with peaceful spaces for reflection. I found a bench beneath a massive oak tree and sat, watching the autumn light filter through the branches. "You should hit the tree." I turned. A man stood nearby, watching me with an expression of professional concern. "Excuse me?" "If you're upset," he gestured at the oak. "Physical release helps. Bottling up emotions affects treatment outcomes." He was East Asian, mid-30s, handsome in a quiet way, the kind of face that grew more interesting the longer you looked at it. His white coat identified him as staff, but something in his manner suggested more than a regular physician. "I'm not upset," I said, "just tired." He sat down on the bench beside me, uninvited but somehow not intrusive. "You're Vivian Price, the pancreatic case." "That's me. I've been reviewing your file." His voice was thoughtful, considering. "Your presentation is unusual. Some of your markers suggest possibilities that don't typically apply to pancreatic cancer." "Possibilities?" "Treatment options, experimental approaches." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "My team and I have been discussing your case. We believe there may be a combination therapy worth trying, something that hasn't been formally tested but has strong theoretical foundations." "Who are you?" "Dr. Nathan Calloway." The name hit me like a physical force. Nathan Calloway, a legend in oncology circles, protege of a Nobel laureate, the man whose research had transformed pancreatic cancer treatment over the past decade. He was rarely in one place long enough to meet, constantly traveling between research institutions and medical centers worldwide. "I tried to find you," I said. "Before. I couldn't get close." "I know. Your persistence was actually what drew my attention to your case." A small smile crossed his face. "That, and the unusual blood work. You've presented with a marker configuration I've never seen before. It might mean nothing, or it might mean everything." I studied him, trying to read his expression. "What are you offering?" "A chance. A small one. I won't lie about the odds. The therapy is aggressive. The side effects will be severe. There's no guarantee it will work." He met my eyes directly. "But there's also no guarantee it won't, and I truly believe that your case could be significant." "Significant how?" "Significant in the sense that it could change how we treat this disease. If this works, if we can identify what makes your presentation different and leverage it, you could be the first." The first person to survive the king of cancers." "I'll do it," I said. He nodded, unsurprised. "I thought you might. You have a look about you." "What kind of look?" "Like someone who's decided to fight." He extended his fist toward me, a gesture so incongruous with his professional demeanor that it startled a laugh out of me. "Let's make history together, Miss Price." I raised my own fist, bumped it against his. "Let's." Chapter 6. The new treatment was brutal. They'd warned me. Nathan had sat me down and explained in clinical detail exactly what the combination therapy would do to my body, the way the medications would attack not just the cancer but everything around it, the collateral damage inherent in such aggressive intervention. I'd nodded and signed the forms and told myself I was ready. I wasn't ready. The first round of treatment put me in the ICU for 3 days. The drugs felt like liquid fire in my veins, burning through me from the inside out. I lost consciousness repeatedly, only to wake screaming, clawing at the IV lines as nurses held me down. Through it all, Nathan was there. I'd surface from the pain to find him at my bedside, adjusting medications, monitoring vitals, his face tight with concentration. "This is good," he said once, when I'd managed to keep my eyes open for more than a few minutes. "Your body is fighting back. That's what we want to see. This is good?" I could barely form words. "I feel like I'm dying." "You're not. I won't let you." He said it with such certainty that I almost believed him. The weeks that followed blurred together rounds of treatment, interspersed with brief periods of recovery, each cycle leaving me weaker than the last. I lost weight I couldn't afford to lose. My hair fell out in clumps. I spent hours staring at the ceiling of my room, too exhausted to move, too stubborn to give up. Nathan visited every day. At first, his presence felt professional, a doctor monitoring a critical case, but gradually, something shifted. He started bringing small things: a book of poetry he thought I might like, a blanket softer than the hospital issue ones, a tiny succulent in a cheerful pot. "Studies show plants improve recovery rates," he said, placing it on my windowsill. Studies. I managed a weak smile. Is that what we're calling it? He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I may have overstated the scientific basis. One afternoon, after a particularly brutal treatment, he sat beside my bed and told me about his childhood, how he'd lost his mother to cancer when he was 12, how he'd decided then irrationally, impossibly, that he would find a way to beat the disease that had taken her. 20 years of work, he said, thousands of patients, and I still can't save everyone. You can't save everyone, I agreed. But you can save some. That has to count for something. He looked at me for a long moment. You're remarkably well-adjusted for someone facing terminal illness. I'm not well-adjusted. I'm just tired of being angry. I paused. Actually, that's not true either. I'm still angry. I'm just too exhausted to express it. He laughed a surprised sound, as though he'd forgotten he knew how. There it is, the fire I saw in your eyes that first day. Still burning. Just at a lower temperature these days. After that conversation, something changed between us. The clinical distance dissolved. He started staying later, long after his official duties ended, sitting in the chair beside my bed and talking about everything and nothing: music, books, the philosophical implications of quantum mechanics, his inexplicable fondness for terrible action movies. For someone so smart, I told him, you have awful taste in entertainment. Those movies are masterpieces of their genre. That genre being things that explode for no reason? Exactly. Pure cinema. It occurred to me, during one of those late-night conversations, that I hadn't laughed this much in years. Not even before everything fell apart. With Grayson, I'd been performing the perfect wife, the grateful recipient of his attention. With Nathan, I was just myself. Whoever that was. Chapter 7. The morning of my 30th birthday. I woke to find fresh snow falling outside my window, a rare event for Texas. Even in December, the world had gone white and quiet overnight, like a fresh page waiting to be written. I was admiring the view when a knock came at my door, followed by the explosion of a party popper and a shower of confetti. Happy birthday! The hallway was packed with people, nurses who'd become friends over months of treatment, fellow patients I'd gotten to know in the common rooms, and at the center of it all, Nathan, holding an elaborate cake topped with a small snowman figurine. How did you know? I asked, stupidly, because of course he knew he had access to all my records. The snowman's name is Steve, he said, ignoring the question. I thought he seemed like a Steve. Steve the snowman. Steve the birthday snowman, specifically. His job is very seasonal. I was laughing and crying at the same time, overwhelmed by the unexpected kindness. And Nathan was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, something soft and wondering, as though I'd surprised him somehow. We built a real snowman later, out in the garden. A misshapen, lumpy thing that bore no resemblance to any natural snow formation. Other patients joined us, and for a few hours, the Anderson Cancer Institute felt less like a hospital and more like a home. Afterward, when everyone else had gone back to their rooms and their treatments, Nathan and I sat on a bench watching the sun set over our creation. What will you do, he asked, when you recover? When? I raised an eyebrow. That's optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic. Your latest scans are promising. He paused. Humor me. What's the plan? I thought about it. Honestly, I haven't let myself think that far ahead. I've been so focused on surviving the next treatment, the next test, the next day. That's probably healthy. But you're allowed to have dreams too. Are you my oncologist or my therapist? I contain multitudes. I laughed, then grew serious. If I survive, when I survive, I think I want to do something meaningful, something that actually helps people. All those years as the Ashworth heiress, I never contributed anything real. I just existed. I want to be more than that. Nathan nodded slowly. That's a good answer. What about you? What do you want? He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer, more uncertain. I want to see this treatment through. I want to prove that what we're doing works, he paused. And he stopped himself, shook his head. What? Nothing. Not appropriate for me to say. Since when do you care about appropriate? He turned to look at me, and something in his expression made my breath catch. Since I started having inappropriate thoughts about a patient, the air between us went very still. Neither of us moved. Nathan. I know. It's unprofessional. It's probably wrong. We can pretend I never said it. He looked away, jaw tight. You asked, and I'm tired of pretending I see you as just a case file. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples. This wasn't supposed to happen. I was sick, possibly dying, and he was my doctor, and the timing was wrong in every conceivable way. And yet, I don't think you're wrong, I said quietly. He went very still. What? For having those thoughts. I don't think you're wrong. I took a breath. I've been having them too. Neither of us spoke. The snow kept falling, settling on the arms of the bench, on the shoulders of our ridiculous snowman. This is complicated, Nathan said finally. Everything about my life is complicated right now. If you survive when you survive, I'd need to stop being your doctor, transfer your case to someone else. I know. And even then, people would talk. They'd say I took advantage. They'd question the validity of the treatment. I know. He reached over and took my hand. His fingers were cold from the snow, but his grip was warm, certain. I don't care, he said, about what they say, about the complications. I just need you to live, Vivian. Everything else we can figure out. I squeezed his hand. Then I'll live. Chapter 8. Spring came to Texas gradually. Then all at once, bare branches erupting into green, the gardens filling with color. My body followed suit. The treatments that had nearly killed me had also impossibly worked. Nathan showed me the latest scans. The tumor had shrunk dramatically. No signs of spreading. We're not out of the woods yet, he warned. But this is better than we hoped. Better than you hoped. I always knew I was special. He laughed. Special is one word for it. The surgery was scheduled for June, a radical procedure to remove all visible cancer tissue. Nathan had assembled a team of the world's best pancreatic surgeons. They would work together, he explained, to give me the best possible chance. The days before the operation passed in a blur of preparation. I tried to stay calm, tried to maintain the peaceful mindset Nathan insisted was crucial for recovery. I mostly failed. To occupy myself, I started a project, a gift for Nathan. I'd discovered during one of our late-night conversations his secret passion for anime, a childhood love he'd never outgrown. His phone lock screen featured a character from a series we'd watched together during my recovery, a determined hero who protected everyone he loved against impossible odds. It reminded me of Nathan. Of course it did. I worked with modeling clay, shaping the figure bit by bit. My hands weren't as steady as they used to be. My coordination compromised by months of illness. The first 5 attempts were disasters. But I kept trying, kept failing, kept trying again. By the 6th attempt, I had something I was proud of. A small, fierce hero, fists raised, eyes blazing with determination. I went to find Nathan, but he was in surgery, a different patient, a different battle. I settled into a waiting room with my gift, turning it over in my hands. The door opened. 2 figures stumbled in, tangled together, clearly unaware they weren't alone. Grayson, a woman's voice, low and breathless. Someone might, no one's here. But then the woman looked up, and our eyes met, and everything stopped. Estelle, still beautiful, still polished, still wrapped around my ex-husband like she belonged there. "What are you doing here?" Grayson demanded, recovering first. "Getting treatment. For the cancer. Remember?" His brow furrowed. "You're still here? I thought they'd have cured you by now. It's a process." Estelle detached herself from Grayson's arms, her expression settling into the familiar mask of wounded innocence. "I'm part of the surgical team for her procedure. I wanted to help." Something cold settled in my stomach. "What?" I'm a specialist, Vivian. My skills were requested. She smiled, saccharine sweet. I know we have history, but I'd never let that affect patient care. I thought about that recording, still saved on my phone, about her voice saying I'd be better off dead. No, I said. Excuse me? Find another surgeon. I don't want you anywhere near me when I'm unconscious. Estelle's mask slipped, just for a moment. Something ugly flickered in her eyes. Then she was all concern again, all bewildered hurt. Vivian, I understand you're scared. Surgery is terrifying. But surely you can set aside personal feelings for the sake of your health? Personal feelings have nothing to do with it. I don't trust a doctor who wished her patient dead. Silence. Grayson looked confused. Estelle had gone very still. I still have the recording, I added. In case you forgot. The moment hung suspended. Then the door opened again, and Nathan walked in. His gaze moved from Estelle to Grayson to me, assessing the situation with clinical precision. Is there a problem? No problem, Estelle said quickly. Just reconnecting with an old acquaintance. Nathan looked at me. I looked back. She needs to be removed from my surgical team, I said. I see. He turned to Estelle. I'll handle the reassignment. Thank you for your willingness to contribute. Estelle's composure finally cracked. You can't just, I was personally invited to participate. And now you're personally uninvited. The lead surgeon has final say over team composition. That's me. Grayson stepped forward, bristling. You can't talk to her like that. Do you know who she is? I know exactly who she is. Nathan's voice was calm, deadly, and I know what she said about my patient, which is why she'll be leaving now. The silence stretched. Grayson looked ready to argue, but something in Nathan's expression must have warned him off. Fine, he said. We'll go. But this isn't over. It is for today. They left. The door closed behind them. Nathan turned to me. Are you all right? I was shaking, I realized. The confrontation had taken more out of me than I'd expected. I made you something, I said, which wasn't an answer at all, and held out the little clay figure. He took it carefully, turning it over in his hands. Something in his face softened. You made this? For me? It's for luck. For the surgery. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he set the figure gently on a nearby table and pulled me into his arms. You're going to be fine, he murmured against my hair. I promise. I closed my eyes and let myself believe him. Chapter 9. The morning of the surgery. The sky was a perfect, unblemished blue. Nathan came to see me before I was taken to the operating room. He was already in scrubs, his face professionally calm, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. How are you feeling? Terrified, I admitted, but ready. He took my hand. Remember what I told you. Your body is strong. We've done everything possible to prepare you for this. I know. And when you wake up, he hesitated. When you wake up, I'll be there. Promise? Promise. They wheeled me down the corridor, through doors that swung open and shut like barriers between worlds. The operating room was cold and bright, filled with masked figures who moved with choreographed precision. Someone placed a mask over my face. Count backward from 10. I made it to 7 before the darkness took me. Chapter 10. I don't remember the surgery, of course. I don't remember the hours that followed, lost in an anesthetic haze. I remember only fragments, the beeping of monitors, voices murmuring, the sense of Nathan's presence somewhere nearby. When I finally surfaced, really surfaced, not the confused half-waking of the recovery room, it was night. The hospital room was dim, lit only by the glow of medical equipment. Someone was slumped in the chair beside my bed. Nathan. Still in scrubs, though rumpled now, days of stubble on his jaw. He looked exhausted, as though he'd aged years in a single day. Hey, I managed. My voice was barely a whisper. His eyes snapped open. For a moment, he just looked at me, his expression unreadable. Then his face crumpled, and tears spilled down his cheeks. It worked, he said. Vivian, it worked. Chapter 11. Recovery was slow, painstaking work. The surgery had taken 7 hours. Nathan and his team had removed every visible trace of cancer, but my body was devastated. struggling to rebuild what the disease and treatment had destroyed. I spent weeks in the hospital, then months in rehabilitation. Physical therapy to regain strength. Occupational therapy to relearn basic tasks my weakened hands had forgotten. Endless follow-up appointments, blood tests, scans. Nathan transferred my care to a colleague, as he'd promised. It felt strange, after so many months of depending on him, to have someone else managing my treatment. But he visited every day, brought me books, flowers, increasingly terrible action movies for us to watch together. Held my hand through the difficult moments and celebrated the small victories the first time I walked unassisted. The first meal I finished without nausea. The first night I slept through without nightmares. Somewhere in there, without either of us quite naming it, we became something more than patient and doctor. More than friends. Something that didn't have a word yet, but felt like hope. 6 months after the surgery, I sat in a conference room at the Anderson Cancer Institute, surrounded by oncologists from around the world. They'd come to confirm what the tests already showed. No detectable cancer cells, Dr. Reyes announced, reading from the final report. All markers within normal ranges. Complete remission. I heard the words, but they didn't feel real. After so long preparing for death, I didn't know how to process survival. Nathan sat beside me, his hand finding mine under the table. "What this means, doctor," Reyes continued, "is that Miss Price has achieved something unprecedented. She is, to our knowledge, the first person in medical history to fully recover from pancreatic cancer." The room erupted questions, shouted, hands raised, the buzz of historic discovery. I sat in the middle of it all, holding Nathan's hand, trying to remember how to breathe. Chapter 12. The day I was officially discharged, the Texas sky stretched blue and endless above us. Nathan walked me through the gardens one last time, past the oak tree where we'd first met, past the spot where we'd built our lumpy snowman, past all the places that had become landmarks in my unexpected survival. "Now what?" he asked. I thought about everything that had led me here. The diagnosis, the divorce, the treatment that had almost killed me before saving my life. I thought about who I'd been before and who I'd become. "I'm going to donate the money I'd set aside for end-of-life care to cancer research," I said. "It seems right. That's generous. It's practical. I don't need it anymore." I paused, "and I'm going to find something meaningful to do. Work that matters. I'm still figuring out what that looks like." Nathan nodded. "That sounds like a good plan. What about you? What do you want?" He smiled that quiet, private smile I'd come to know so well over the past year. "I want to take the woman I love somewhere beautiful. Start the life we've been waiting for." My breath caught. "The woman you love? Don't act surprised. I haven't been subtle." "You're a scientist. I assumed subtlety was your default setting." He laughed and pulled me close. "Vivian Price, will you let me take care of you for the rest of your life? The healthy, cancer-free rest of your life?" I looked up at him, this man who'd believed in me when I'd stopped believing in myself, who'd fought for my survival with the same fierce determination he brought to everything. "Yes," I said, "but only if you let me take care of you too. Deal." He kissed me then, in the garden where we'd first met, under the autumn sky we'd defied together. The oak tree scattered its leaves around us like confetti. I thought about Grayson, probably still running his company, probably still measuring love in terms of strategic advantage. I thought about Estelle, her career in ruins, her secrets exposed. I thought about the family who'd raised me and discarded me, the society that had embraced and rejected me. None of it mattered anymore. What mattered was this: the man holding me, the second chance I'd been given, the future stretching out ahead like an open road. I'd spent 29 years being someone else's daughter, someone else's wife, someone else's responsibility. From now on, I would just be myself. And that, finally, was enough. The end.